Hi. I'm Robin Schwartz, and I'm the Program and Grant Director of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County, and this is as part of our Spring Rights Literary Festival. There are 6 more free workshops. I think 4 are on Zoom, and 2 of them are live, and you probably saw them because you signed up for this workshop. Did everyone see those other workshops? Yeah, so you know they're available. And I just want to thank our sponsors. The sponsors for the Spring Rights Literary Festival are the Marriott, CFCU Community Credit Union, Ithaca College, the Odyssey Bookstore, M&T Bank, and we get money from New York State Council on the Arts and Poets and Writers. And our media sponsors are Cinemapolis, WITH Radio, and WSKG. And because of all of those resources, we're able to have 37 free events and pay the writers. So yay for all the sponsors. So now I'm just going to turn everything over to Daley Downing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you. I hate these things, so I'm going to do my best to. So you all saw the blurb about listening to me talk about writing disability in a way that is not, oh my gosh, I can't believe they published that. I imagine if you're here, you've come across, there's a blind character, a deaf character, an autistic character, maybe there's a veteran with PTSD or who has lost a limb, something like that, that you read the book and you think, I really wish they had talked about this important topic in a way that didn't feel condescending, didn't feel like the author's almost wanting you to hate the character. That's so been me. I've read a lot of those myself. I've also read some books with excellent disability rep. I think a lot of it is stereotypes are still way too much a thing in our society, unfortunately. And disability is a thing. There are illnesses, there are accidents, people go blind, deaf, they come back from war and can't do certain things anymore, or they're born with some kind of condition that means regular life is going to be challenging. So everybody, I think, should be aware that people are disabled, you may become disabled, and it doesn't have to be a horrible, I can't live like this, I don't want my family member or my loved one to live like this. You can get through it. You can learn to have a quality of life that you feel comfortable with, that your family's like, yeah, they're doing fine. And a lot of that, I think, starts with rep. We're in Pride Month right now. A whole lot of positive representation of like gay or trans characters in literature has gone a long way towards non-queer people saying, hey, this isn't so scary, or this isn't someone I should be afraid of, or you start to feel more like, yeah, this is just a person. This is a person who's different than me, but that's no big deal. So I think disability reps should go the same way. And I come at this from a very personal point of view because I have 2 neurodiverse children. One has been confirmed autistic, the other one, for now, we're just calling him a unicorn because we're still waiting on an official diagnosis, but he's not an average child. He has his quirks, as we like to say it, and he definitely has difficulty with certain things that other kids his age, they pick right up. And again, this is not horrible. This is something that we'll get there. We'll learn to deal with it. We'll learn how to process, how to get through the challenges, how to make the most of the stuff that we feel this is awesome about him, and to teach him that he can love himself too, no matter how he is. I got diagnosed with a learning disorder extremely late in life. Well, I say that because I was 21 at the time, and through that, by then you're through school and you didn't receive all these accommodations and all these things that would be really helpful. So you're not having an anxiety attack every time you have to take an exam, things like that. And then I became chronically ill a few years ago. So you have, this type of thing happens, and it means that I would love to read more books about people who have a condition and they feel they're thriving. And reading about a character like that is going to help promote not just awareness about the condition and what it may look like, but also this is how you deal with it, and love yourself, and not be like, I can't do this, and make it more, this is my life and I'm cool with it. So because we've seen bad examples, I want to holler out some good examples. I'm partial to this one because my friend wrote it, but there's a YA novel called The Boy Who Steals Houses by C.G. Drew. And it features an autistic character, and she's autistic herself, so the rep is her life basically, without a whole lot of the awful things, which is good. But because there's child abuse and the kids run away, and there's a lot of stuff. But also an autistic child may be more likely to be abused, may be more likely to run away because they feel they can't stay where they are. So again, to be aware of things like that. The Percy Jackson series, anyone's familiar with that? Yes, there are lots of examples in there of characters that they're technically disabled, like in the mortal world, but when they cross into the realm of the Greek gods, that becomes their superpower. Like Percy Jackson himself, he's dyslexic whenever he reads English, but he can read Greek perfectly, and it gets him and his friends out of the jams several times, and it helps him learn more about his own powers as a demigod. I think that's a fabulous example of this is a challenge, but not a hindrance. Here's where it doesn't work, here's where it's a positive thing. Six of Crows, any Leigh Bardugo fans? Leigh Bardugo is an author, can't remember the name of it, but she has a motor neuron disease. Basically, her joints and bones do not work very well. She often has to walk with a cane. She's one of those people where she often won't be at live events because she's not well enough to be there. But she wrote a character called Kaz Breaker who walks with a cane in the book, an undisclosed ailment. But basically, it's based a whole lot on her own issues. A new book, if you like horror, called The Whispering Dark. It's just released by Kelly Andrew. She's completely deaf. Her main character in The Whispering Dark is completely deaf and has a cochlear implant. So obviously a lot of real life rep in that, because of course she's had negative experiences. She's also had loving, caring people who help her. So you have that My latest favorite that I just discovered, because I read it to my 9-year-old, The Tea Dragon Society. It's a graphic novel, features an adventurer, seriously goes out and kills the monsters, who ends up paralyzed and in a wheelchair. And how he and his partner put together a new life for themselves where they're thriving, and it's not looked at as this is terrible, it's this wasn't what we thought our lives would be like, but how do we make it better? There's a whole lot of positive beer rap in the Tea Dragon Society too, for younger readers, which I love. So, you know, some places to get you going. My biggest tips when you're trying to figure out, so there's disability rep in this book, is it actually positive or could it be negative? Could it even be harmful? Look at where they're basing it on. These are movies, not books, but I think it really proves the point. Rain Man with Dustin Hoffman back in the day. The idea that all autistic kids will be math savants who can't live at home and have to go in an institution, and then when they grow up you can take them to Vegas and they guess everything right so you win in the same amount of money gambling. Not necessarily. Possibly a few autistic males may be super good at math and be able to, you know, win you a lot at Vegas. Sure, possibly. Is that going to be a thing across the board for everybody with autism? No. So you have Rain Man, which came out in the 80s, which it catered to stereotypes. It's not necessarily helpful, versus The Accountant, if anybody's seen The Accountant with Ben Affleck. I don't know how he did his research, but I thought his portrayal of an autistic character who turns out to be an assassin was wonderful. They covered stimming, they covered anxiety, they covered social awkwardness, all in a way that made me feel like this character feels like someone where if I met them in person, like if this was my accountant, I'd be like, yeah, I think you're autistic. I really recommend that movie if you don't mind R-rated movies, because there's a whole lot of violence in it. Because again, he turns out to be an assassin. But I thought the way that was presented was very positive towards, you have this condition, it has its drawbacks, but it could also have its benefits, because like the character is extremely self-reliant. He has a great deal of sympathy. He has a really strong moral compass. Like if you get involved, but he's not on your list, or you're not on his list, like he doesn't want to kill you. You're not involved. You're not part of this. He wants to keep all that separate. I love the way that movie talked about autism in such an unusual setting. So no matter what the character's condition, illness, whatever is, you kind of have to talk about ableism. You have to talk about prejudice. There will always, unfortunately, well hopefully not one day, but at the moment there will always be in the real world people who say, oh, it can't be that bad, you should just try harder, or just give them all this medicine and act like it doesn't create a problem. There will always be people who say things like, what do you mean you need a new cochlear implant because that model went out of date in 2018? It happens, unfortunately. So I think the question of whether the rep is harmful or helpful focuses on how, well, partly on how the rep is portrayed. But also, how do the other characters react? I will forever champion my friend. I helped her in the editing. The Boy Who Steals Houses is an excellent example of the autistic child who is in an abusive home, so he runs away, ends up being adopted by a family that is aware there are challenges, there are things that other kids may not be dealing with, but they see past all of that. They see there's also this funny, warm, wants to help out, wants to be seen as part of something, child, that's what they're focusing on. So if you have a book where there's a mom who fights for their child to have the most updated wheelchair, cochlear implant, you fill in the blank here, and says, yes, they do need it. That's an example of good rep. There are definitely books where you have bullying and abuse shown, but it's also condemned by the other characters. So I would say again that that's helpful because you're showing this person has a disability. It doesn't mean it makes them a monster. It doesn't mean that they have to be feared or they have to be targeted this way. Yes.
And also, especially, that they're allowed to be imperfect.
Yes.
And complicated and not like inspirational stories.
Yes.
And so that is what gets complicated.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about how to navigate like being unhappy about having a disability versus like that being characterized as internalized ableism. Like I think it's kind of okay to be angry about having limitations, like even totally able-bodied people are angry about their limitations sometimes. So like, how do you know what will upset other people? Is it just basically what you said, like the character, but also the other characters?
The other characters. Yes, that's actually, I'll skip around a little because it's a little further down my list, but that was actually a big thing that I think is important. Your character, depending on what happened to them, let's use a veteran as an example. Veteran goes to war, has PTSD, comes back, has an anxiety attack by going to the grocery store. That's going to be frustrating. Maybe they're angry, maybe they feel like, oh, you loser, why can't you do this anymore? That is all natural. But again, if in the book their loved ones suggest, if you went to a counselor, someone who could help you maybe try to get back, not the idea that you have to be the way you were before, but the idea that you're still a great person. This happened to you, it sucks. You can still be great, you can still be awesome. Like to have that kind of rep is very helpful. I think it's perfectly acceptable for the characters themselves to be confused, depressed, angry, to feel like it just isn't fair.
How many like test readers of the type of a character do you think
I
are
would,
necessary to make sure like it's fine?
I would say get 3 to 6 beta readers. Definitely people either that have firsthand experience with the condition. For example, maybe you happen to find a veteran who's cool talking about their PTSD. Or if you have, like Kelly Andrew, for example, she's on social media. Don't just like message her and be like, hey, I need to talk to a deaf person for this book I want, right? Of course, but, you know, a lot of people may be willing to grant interviews, or recommend, like there are, community groups, that you can reach out to. Let me see, no, wrong page, there we go. The one that, stands out to me for like sensitivity, is, Me Before You, if anybody's read that or seen the movie, where there's a very ordinary, able-bodied man, is in a terrible car accident, gets paralyzed, can't do anything. And he has an extreme depression descend on him, feels there is no point in going on with having to live in this new way. I think this author did a very good job of tackling someone who's in this situation who realistically will be having at least some of these feelings, and the other characters discuss the pros, the cons, the possibilities of what your new life could be like, versus recognizing that it's understandable that he's struggling with this, he wants to go on. So, yeah, definitely find as many first-hand people as you can, or close to it. For example, I have, neurodiverse children. I have had many experiences where there's tears, there's anger, there's frustration for everybody, there's confusion, there's why do I have to live like this, it isn't fair, versus learning to grasp onto I'm different and that can make me awesome. And it's a process and you don't get there quickly. So that's the other thing I would say when you're looking for rep that is not necessarily positive. For example, in Me Before You, the young man decides to end his life by medically assisted suicide. That is definitely a realistic outcome. It's a very poignant, very complicated scenario as well, because of course his parents really would prefer he try to stick around. So it's okay to have rep where it's accurate and the character doesn't necessarily feel terrific about their condition. Exploring all the stages of mental health related to a disability is also positive rep, because the character themselves is allowed to say, I don't know if I would choose to have this condition, because it's okay to have other characters that say, I still love you, even though this happened to you. And to have other characters that say, I get you, I don't know if I could handle this, I think you're doing great. the big thing that I would say that really tips me off as to whether it's actually good rep or not, tackling the pros and cons is good, for sure. Making it clear that there are negative aspects to lots of disabilities, either because it definitely impairs your function. For example, you can't even go to the grocery store without having an anxiety attack. That's, wow, that's gonna impact your life. Or more extreme to things like, there's no wheelchair ramp at your apartment complex, but now you need a wheelchair. That's definitely a negative thing, and you are gonna have to figure out, well, how does your character deal with that? And it is totally okay for that character to not be all sunshine and rainbows about it, because that is realistic. So if you have, sadly, books with autistic characters tend to focus on this a lot. The idea that finding a cure for the condition just fixes everything. I have two very complex children that I love dearly, that there have absolutely been times I have had to physically haul them out of a place because they're screaming and trying to throw things or hit people, and thought, I really, really wish I didn't have to deal with this. Does it mean that I wish they were not neurodiverse? Actually, no. If there was some kind of medicine they could take for anxiety that didn't have terrible side effects, that could be fantastic. But do I want their entire brain chemistry rewired? I don't think so, because it may change that person I know that I love. So discussing cures is also really important, and the pros and cons of it. For example, if we could find a way for veterans to grow new limbs, I bet a lot of veterans would absolutely say, totally, sign me up. So fine. I'm not gonna tell them that they can't. But if you say to an autistic person, I have this pill that will make you not be autistic anymore, they would probably stop and think long and hard about whether that would actually benefit them or not, because a lot of the traits for autism, like being incredibly passionate about the things you're interested in, often being very creative, being able to devote yourself wholeheartedly to something. The rough draft for The Boy Who Steals Houses was written in 30 hours. Yes, we all kind of yelled at her afterwards. You went how long without sleeping? But she created a book that is a bestseller on Amazon in like 4 different countries. It's being used in classrooms across the globe to teach helpful autism rep. It's like, I think she would definitely say she doesn't want to be a part of a cure that would take away who she is. You can talk about cures, but don't act like the cure actually fixes everything. That's how I feel. Go ahead, talk about cures. But again, I think pros and cons goes a long way towards, again, actually helpful rep. So, before we get to, I've got two writing prompts. The thing I'll say about interviewing, definitely there is not just a more polite, there's a more say better doesn't. There's a way to ask where it's a very I feel your feelings type of way. Obviously, like I said, if you leave here and come across a person in a wheelchair, do not ambush them. They won't thank you at all. But there could be people that you know that, for example, have autistic children. Maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable discussing it. That's fine too. Because we live in the age of the internet, it would be pretty easy to either through Google or there are a lot of Facebook groups where, for example, parents of children who are deaf, who are blind, who fill in the blank here. There's that condition where the kids can't go outside in the sun. I can't remember what it's called, but I know for a fact that there's several support groups for parents having to learn to raise their kids after dark, basically. So things like that, you can often find someone to reach out to say, I'm writing a book, or I've read stuff where I feel like the representation on this condition isn't really helpful. It's not really showing that the folks who have to deal with this are still people. Either I want my character to be, seen in a way where readers get it. This is a person. Would you mind if I ask you some questions? Or something like, for example, you find, oh yeah, that's what I was going to mention. M.N. Jolie, yes, M.N. Jolie is an autistic author, provides free copies of his books to people who ask, because he wants the rep out there. Excellent autistic rep. I read one of his books and was very impressed. He's the type of person you could reach out to ask, politely, sensitively about an interview. Veterans groups often get approached. Usually they'll have spokespeople that are willing to talk about their experiences, or anonymously share people's experiences, folks that are like, you can tell them how I feel, what happened, but please don't leave your name. Stuff like that does exist. Like I said, a little bit of internet searching will definitely go a long way. Because a lot of authors that write about certain conditions do not have them themselves. That's where the problems happen sometimes. But again, like me before you, I thought that was a very good way, sensitivity-wise, showing the pros, the cons. You really felt for this character's struggle, so making that connection, definitely, that's what we're after. Okay, so, does anybody need anything to write with? If you feel like giving the writing prompts a go. It occurred to me, I think I didn't bring my paper, but
Does anyone need paper? Two? How about,
Sure.
pens? I'll borrow some. Oh, after she gives the prompts, I'm gonna stop the tape. And then, I'm gonna leave, if that's okay. So thank you everyone for coming. I will get some paper.
I'll give you a couple minutes to jot down just a couple ideas, like, it's basically, a character says this. How would you have a character react in a way that's supportive or calling out the ableism? And you can decide what you want that to look like. I won't ask anybody to share. If you're like, no, don't make me. But whenever I'm reading a book or watching a movie and you get to that part of where, oh, that's such an ableist remark, what happens next is what'll make or break it for me. You know, how it's dealt with. Yes.
So I think what we were just saying kind of goes along with what you were talking about earlier. So it sounds like it's possible to have good representation where you are showing that there's like ableism and discrimination, but then you want some of the characters to really be calling that out and drawing attention to it.
Yes, because I feel that's a problem. Please don't keep reading The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, people, because that's not good autism rap. There are lots of books out there like that, unfortunately. I neglected to look up the author. Years ago, I read a fantastic YA novel called My Aunt Ruth about a woman who loses her legs to diabetes. Her struggle, her feelings, how she decides to get her life, the direction she wants it to go. I really liked the way all that was explored. So, first one.
That's fine. I'll get it.
The sentence, uttered by whoever, in the book is, "He's such a spaz." And that's definitely not a nice way to talk about, for example, let's say a Down syndrome child. They often get targeted, unfortunately, by bullies.
Autistic stims are, people call those
Yeah, that's actually it's considered very offensive. If you refer to Tourette's, tics as spastic, because it's from the idea that look how weird they are, as opposed to just noticing, oh, this person can't control this.
It doesn't help to explain to people that they're muscle spasms.
Right. Like that's where the word tics has become the predominant vocabulary when we're talking about, for example, Tourette's. Tourette's folks would definitely say tics. Yeah, that's medically accurate, and I don't feel like somebody's like, oh, you're so weird. So think about how someone might respond to that. Robin, how dare you? So think about how someone could respond to that, where it explains and it defends. There's part of the condition that is very hard to control. That doesn't mean this person is like an inferior human being. That's what we're after. And the other one I'll give you, a lot of things that are an issue for disabled folks in real life, they're more prone to ending up in abusive relationships, especially if you have, for example, an autistic person who may not realize when this is actual abuse. It goes beyond like sarcasm, or maybe they're just teasing. This is actual abuse. They're more likely to be gaslit, to not realize when something is, no, this is not acceptable. This is beyond pushing you to get over your struggles, and to something where, no, they don't have to make you do these things, and they just need to respect your boundaries and your comfort zone, and they're not respecting you, so that's an issue. Unfortunately, you see this type of thing a lot with Down syndrome. People who have physical impairments could be targets for very narcissistic people, because they feel, oh, they should be so lucky to have anyone. Definitely not. I definitely am raising my kids to believe, because I think all disabled people should believe, no, you have worth as a person, and whatever your personality is, your disability is not your personality. It may contribute to some factors, some traits. It's not who you are. Yeah, you're autistic, but what else are you? Are you creative? Are you funny? Are you super interested in, fill in the blank? You will find true love when the person says, I know that right now you're having a meltdown, sobbing on the kitchen floor because you couldn't remember how many times you have to wrap the rubber band to get it to stay. I know that, and I still love you. So the other prompt I came up with was, I don't know if I could handle being with someone like that. And you can imagine whatever that is. Physical condition, illness, learning disability, etc., etc.
So you're looking for